Okay, so welcome back. In this part, we're going to be creating the triangle that we saw in the example in the first part of the tutorial. And we're going to do this with a span within this anchor tag here. So I'm just going to create a span element here. Now what I'm going to do is apply styles to this, and it's a bit hacky, but it works, and it works in the browsers that I mentioned in the first part of the tutorial as well. So if we come down to a new line, I'm going to go ahead and say .tools a span. Okay, so what we're going to do within here is we're going to give this a width of 0, we're going to give this a height of 0, and now what we're going to do is apply a series of borders to this. And what that's going to do is it's going to invert the borders, and you'll see it will create this kind of arrow effect. And it's, it's a clever way to do things. So the first thing I'm going to do is set a border left. I'm going to set this 5 pixels solid, but I'm going to give it transparency. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing to the right border. Now, transparent. Now what I'm going to do is set a border at the top, and I'm not going to set this transparent, so it's going to point down, not point downwards, but it's going to set the arrow facing downwards. So the border top now is going to be 5 pixels solid, but I'm going to set this to something like 555. #555. So what's going to happen now is when we go ahead and refresh, it might look a little bit wonky. It's up there, you see. It's an arrow. We have an arrow shape, so that's perfect. Now what we need to do is go ahead and apply some more styles so this sits next to the text, and it's a bit further down because at the moment it's right at the top of our button. So I'm going to go ahead and say display inline block. We've already spoken about that one. And I'm going to set a margin on this. I'm going to set 2 pixels on the top, 2 pixels on the bottom, and then 7 pixels either side. So when I refresh now, we've got this just in the middle there. So, if you're doing this with different font sizes, it might take a little bit of playing around. I've obviously already created the CSS for this, so I know the exact positioning. But if you go ahead and inspect something, so we'll open up here and click on the span, you can go ahead and you can play around with these figures, so getting it exactly where you want it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to build the actual unordered list within our tool element, which is here. So let's go ahead and build the markup for this now. We're just going to create an unordered list with some list items inside. Now inside these list items we're going to have anchor tags once again, because remember what we've already done is we've applied a style to all anchor elements within this tools class. So the actions, let's go ahead and say, what did we put down before? View profile. Let's go ahead and duplicate this a couple of times, and let's go ahead and say send message and remove friend. So we've got a few to work with. Remember to experiment whenever you're doing things like this. Experimenting with longer text is really important, because at one point you'll more than likely need to change something. Now this looks a bit of a mess. The reason being is that we have our unordered list set to default styling, and that is that we have a list style type, we have padding, and we have margins. So we can go ahead and see this in the browser if we just hit inspect element on this. Now an unordered list has a list style type of disk, which are these here. Inside the list items, we don't have any problems with there, but the unordered list also has padding and margin. So we need to go ahead and remove these. Now this would probably be removed already as part of some kind of global reset style sheet, but we're sort of going to do it on the fly just for the sake of this tutorial. So we're going to say tools.tool ul and then apply some styles to this. So it's the unordered list within the tool element within the tools element. So we've created the class within the class there. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, we already know that the list style type is disk, and I'm going to say list style type none. Now that's just going to get rid of them disks. Perfect. Now we've still got some issues here. We've got padding just here, and we've got a margin here. So this part of the element Let's just look at it. The orange part of the element is the margin, and the green part of the element that you can see is the padding. So we need to set these both to 0. So margin 0, padding 0. So when I refresh now, perfect. So everything's lined up and it's already looking like we want it to. It's looking like a menu. Now the only problem is that we've got this inline piece of text here, which is no longer inline because these have pushed everything downwards here. You can see that there's the blue space here. So we need to find a way to create this as part of this, but not to affect anything under it or next to it. So the way to do this is that we want to set a position on here of absolute. There's no reason that I'm including this at the top. I just tend to include any positioning and things like that at the top. Okay, so now what we want to do is we just want to set a width to this. In fact, we won't set the width now. We'll check what happens and then I'll tell you why we need the width. So we've got this here, position absolute. Now the only problem here is that we've got it a bit squished, so we need to go ahead and set a width of 100%. Oh no, sorry, no, we don't need to do that. That will come just a bit later with some padding on this side here. Okay, so we've got our position absolute here. We've got our inline text here. If we go ahead and just create that paragraph underneath here, this is a paragraph of text, and refresh, you see that that hasn't affected it. So this is now hovering or flapping over this part here, or overlapping, not flapping. Okay, so we've got the menu looking nice, but this is all come down as a new line, so we want to increase the padding just here. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's go back up to the top just after tools A, but I'm going to say tools, and then the direct descendant of this is A. This means direct descendant, so the A that immediately follows and then nothing within other elements. We want to set the padding right to, let's say 40 pixels or something. Refresh. Okay, cool. So what that's done now is it's added more padding here, but you can see we've got this massive problem where these now don't line up here. Well, that's easy. We'll return back to exactly what I was doing just a moment ago, which was setting a width of 100% on here, and that will just make sure that the width goes all the way to the end of this, and that's however long that is. So if we change this actions text here to actions and stuff, like I said, then everything else will follow and always be 100% width. Okay, so what do we want to do now? Well, we need to find a way to hide these elements, and then we want to show them as we hover over. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and hide these now, and then in the next part of the tutorial we will look at actually opening this, and we'll have obviously an explanation as to how this happens and why it happens. So what do we want to do? Well, we need to say that we always want this tool class to be hidden, basically, and there's a lot of explanation as to why this works this way. But we'll try it the standard way first. So I'm going to say tools.tool. Now I'm going to say display none. And let's take a look at what happens. Okay, so that disappears. And what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and show this when the user hovers over this element here, this anchor here. So we need to specify a rule, and this is extremely easy. All we need to do is say tools hover. So tools hover, we would normally want to say tools A hover because we want to hover over this, but because we've got a wrapper element, then it still works. So we can specify that, and I'll show you why we need to do it this way in just a moment, or try and explain why we need to do it this way. So tools hover, and then after here we say tool, and then say display block. Okay, so we already have tools. Oh no, we haven't set any specific rules for tool yet, but anyway, what this will do is it will display blocks. It's display block by default. We're setting it to display none, and then when we hover over tools, this element inside tool, we display block. So when I go ahead and refresh, hover, you see that it opens. Okay, perfect. So we've got this part of it working. Now, a brief explanation as to why it won't work if we say tools A hover or tools immediate A hover. And let's go ahead and refresh. You see it's not working, nothing's opening. The reason being is that we're saying now A, when we hover over A, or the anchor element directly within tools, we want to show tool. Now that's fair enough, but tool has to be contained within A, so we can't do that. We have to say tools hover. So that's just the way it goes, but it works. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to style these links here so that when we hover over these, we have an underline, but we don't want to include this first one. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's do this here. So we want to say tools UL-LIA. So we're saying any anchor within the LI within UL within tools, we want to say when we hover text decoration underline. And when we go ahead and refresh, hover over, they're now underlined when we hover over them. So let's take a look at this in Firefox. Refresh, works perfectly, scales up nicely. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in IE. Perfect, looks fine. Let's take a look at it in IE8. Absolutely fine. I said in IE7 it doesn't work, but you know, as I said at the start of the tutorial, no one really cares. Brilliant. So we've now created this drop-down list menu using pure CSS. We've included an arrow, we've included gradients, and we've included this hover effect. So no JavaScript required at all. Really fast and something that you can incorporate straight onto your site really, really easily.